Welcome everybody to episode number 318 of Goulet Q&A, where fountain pens are still a thing. I'm Brian Goulet here at Goulet Pens. And today's episode, I'm going to be talking about stuff that you can apply to waterproof your writing. Like you've already written it, can you put something over top of it on the page to keep it from moving? We're going to talk about that. If you can use calligraphy ink in the Boston Safety Pen, can you? We'll find out. If I've ever gotten mold in my pens, because I don't always clean them so frequently, and what I've done about that. Ink suggestions for the BENU Galaxy Cocktail, because there's a lot of colors going on. What to do with rusty dip nibs, and plating on the stainless steel LAMY 2000, specifically the clip. Very obscure, specific question, but we're going to cover that too. Should be a good one. We're skipping the spotlight today, but I got a lot of feedback, a lot of new products, and I got 6 questions instead of 5. So we're going to see how it all goes. Let's get into it with feedback. All right, everybody, loud and clear. I heard you from last week. Of course, it's the non-pen related question that I get the most feedback on last week. Because it's pretty clear that when we're not talking about pens, I don't know what I'm talking about quite as much. This is about Coke versus Pepsi. And apparently there's a bunch of brands that I was completely mistaken about whether they fall under the Coke or Pepsi umbrella. So my apologies to you all. I was just apparently spreading bad information. So forgive me for that, but thank you everybody for correcting me in the comments. So got lots of feedback about, what y'all prefer, but let's see here. A&W is not a Pepsi product. I was wrong about that. Dr. Pepper, also not a Pepsi product. In some markets, they are distributed by Pepsi, but they are part of a completely separate company that also includes 7-Up, Canada Dry, Sunkist, Crush, IBC, Snapple, RC Cola, and many others. The Pepsi's company root beer is Mug root beer. Okay, that, yeah. Yeah, I was wrong. So thank you, Danny. Thank you, Marcus M 359 and Joe Keffer 6525 and several others. Y'all all corrected me. Other comment here: A&W is actually owned by Keurig Dr. Pepper, not Pepsi. Pepsi root beer is Mug. And just FYI, Dr. Pepper is Dr. Pepper. It is not a Coca-Cola product nor a Pepsi product. It is both bottled by both Coke and Pepsi, but it's its own company. It is not a Coca-Cola or Pepsi product, and it is the pride of Texas. Just trying to clarify to it a little. Great video, thank you. Well, my apologies to all you Texans who are proud of your Dr. Pepper. You make a fine product that I enjoy myself on a not irregular basis. But yeah, I had no idea. I had no idea what falls under the Keurig, Dr. Pepper, Snapple, and various other things. Fuji water. There's all kinds of brands that fall under that family. So I did not do deep research on that. Apparently I should have. But anyway, I've learned my lesson. Okay, other feedback. Marco at Wire said, regarding the shading waterproofing inks, I prefer the Noodler's Baltimore Canyon Blue. I love the shading that I get with my Pelikan M200 Fine, and the dry time is not that bad compared to other Noodler's inks. It also doesn't spread or bleed on the paper. There you go, Baltimore Canyon. I don't know that I've actually used that ink myself yet. I might have to give that a try. That's a relatively newer one in our lineup. And then Eric Neal 8582 says, talking about the E95 Pilot E95S nibs that I tried to remove, could not do it. Says those nibs are definitely glued in place. When restoring the vintage models 50 plus years old, sometimes the glue fails and the nib slides off. In those cases, it has to be glued back in place. My preferred method is clear epoxy, or ink will seep out of the back and sides of the nib. Okay, well there you go. So it's not just a preferential issue, it's like a function issue. It's got to be glued in place. Did not know that. So that's very helpful information. JH Pile 2 says, well, the problem with using pH test strips to test the pH levels of ink is that the color of the test strip will be the color of the ink. However, there are electronic pH test devices. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I don't have a pool. I don't regularly test pH levels. I have not done this for inks myself. I think in the context that I've heard other people do it, it was with an electronic pH tester. But as soon as I read your comment, I was like, oh, duh, of course. If you have a white pH test strip that you're trying to test the level of the pH by the strip turning a certain color, if you do it with ink, it's going to be whatever color that ink is, and you're not going to be able to see the results of the test strip. So Yeah, that was kind of my bad, but glad y'all are a little bit brighter than I am. So thank you for pointing that out. Danny, again, here says, in relation to talking about materials and stuff like that, pen materials, Ultim. Ultim is the strongest, but it has a yellow color to it. I'm not that Southern. I just merged those two words together and it sounded like yeller. Oh, we'll just call it yeller. Yeah, but it's got a yeller color to it. If you find anything claiming to be clear Ultim, it is fake. Natural Ultim is yellow and it can be dyed darker, but it will never be clear. Plexiglass is also very strong, like Brian said, but it can still crack with impact. Another super strong plastic is Peak, but Peak is white, not clear. I've never heard of Peak. I've not heard that used in pens. And even Ultim, not often used in pens. Shown Design is the only one that I can think of that has done that. There might be like a one-off independent pen maker that's made out of Ultim, just as kind of like a little one-off kind of thing, but Shown's the only one that's ever done it in like any type of production batch, but it's been pretty small quantities in that respect. Not a super popular pen color, also very expensive, but it is a really cool material, very resistant, chemical resistant, all kinds of cool stuff. Anyway, Marvin Mediocre says, PMMA is acrylic and can be injection molded clear. I used to work for a company that made a clear acrylic product. As long as the molds are polished to a mirror-like finish, the parts will be absolutely clear. That's good to know. I've seen injection molding in process at several different pen factories, but never like to that level of detail to see like the insides of the molds and stuff like that. But that's really cool. So yeah, that's good to know. And that kind of makes sense because I know that like, I believe at least that a lot of the high-end injection molded pens are PMMA. And now that I think about it, a number of them are clear. So it's like they're probably not using a different material. But anyway, I didn't know to what degree they needed to be polished. I guess most of the context I was thinking about that, having to polish it after it's been manufactured, was with turned resins instead of instead of injection molded. So yeah, turned ones definitely have to be polished. But yeah, if it's injection molded and the mold's clear enough, I guess that makes sense. You can just injection mold the part and it's pretty well good to go. So that's kind of cool. And then last bit of feedback, Judy Jacobs, 5827 says, Ebonite, again, talking about pen materials, Ebonite is a brand name for a hard rubber product initially used for bowling balls. The name has become generic, much like Kleenex, Band-Aid, Escalator, Velcro, Scotch tape, chapstick, Bic. Even aspirin was once a brand name. Hard rubber is still being made and used in fountain pen making and has several advantages over many plastics. It can be carved, cast, polished. It is malleable, so it can be made to fit a nib or other components. Yeah, you can heat it up and heat set it to your nib. Whereas cheap plastic feeds can't do that. Hard rubber is warm in the hand, not stiff and cold like plastic or your dead fingers, should that eventually arise. Well, I guess you wouldn't feel that, would you? We hope this helps. So thank you, Judy. Yeah, good feedback. Yeah, hard rubber it's not like irrelevant in the fountain pen world. It's just not as popular as maybe it should be. I don't know. It's definitely popular in vintage pens. All right, that's it for feedback. Got a lot of it, but thank you all for leaving lots of comments. Love seeing what y'all post. And yeah, we'll keep it going. So let's talk about some new stuff. All right, I got a bunch of new stuff. I actually had to take a few items and move them to next week because I can't cover it all in one video here. I guess because I took off a couple weeks ago and stuff's kind of piled up and we've got a lot of new stuff coming in. So I'm not going to dump it all on you right away, but I'm still dumping a lot. So let's talk about a couple BENUs first. We have two BENU talismans. These are not exclusive to us. These are just available to the world. The talisman is, a specific collection, a specific design of theirs. Pretty neat. Got some interesting shapeage going on with those pens. But they always have some element of, call it mythology or lore or something like that. Luck, charm, something like that to go along with it. So that's always pretty cool. So the Talisman Moonstone is pretty cool. It's like a teensy bit more than than like a Euphoria. It's 162 for the Moonstone Talisman. And it looks really cool. It's like a milky white, kind of like ivory color that turns into like an icy blue, and it's got holographic glitter in there. You can see through the blue. You can see the converter. If you eyedropper the pen, you can see the ink in there. It looks pretty cool. Yeah, so I'm trying to see like what is the talisman that's in there? I don't know. Maybe they don't have like a specific talisman that's in there. Because usually when they do it, they have, you know, some element to it. Like they've had, as a tribute to a good luck crystal. Okay, so I don't know if that has any actual crystal in there. Probably not. But typically they've done, like they had a, you know, 4-leaf clover one. They had like actual clover in there and stuff like that. That was a while ago. But anyway, it's a pretty cool looking pen. So you can check that out. We got pictures up on the screen. What else we got? The talisman ametrine. I believe that's how it's pronounced. Also kind of like a multi-color, somewhat of an ombre with some translucency. And of course glitter because it's BENU. So this is pretty cool looking. It's inspired by the blend of like amethyst and citrine. So it's like orange, purple, and brown hues. So you can go check those out. Similar price. This one's got gold trim on it, which, you know, matches the pen nicely. Number 6 size Schmidt nibs. You can get it in fine, medium, broad, flex fine, and 1.1 stub. These are stainless steel nibs on those. Standard international cartridge converter. Boom. Next up, we got Conklin has a new 1898. We've had several of those pens, but they got a new material. This is another Brooks material, primary manipulation 4.5. And this one is a matte finish. So lots of colors going on in this one. There's a lot of color variation, pen to pen. So we tried to photograph a whole bunch of different pens to show you what they potentially could look like. But you got blues, yellows, oranges, like grays, blacks, lavenders. There's just almost every color that you can imagine on this pen. And it's all kind of swirled together. Looks pretty rad. It looks pretty rad. These are limited editions. Only 198 of them. They're not exclusive to us, but we're going to have some. So you can check those out. Each one is numbered $180 for those number 6 size Yovo made nibs. So that's cool. Check those out. We got some new pens from Delta. So Delta has a pen called the Duna, which is pretty neat. It's a piston filling mechanism on that one. And these are a translucent finish. There's Zephyr, Vortex, and Ghibli. So these are some pretty interesting looking pens. The Zephyr is like a kind of a smoky gray color. They have some light kind of swirled color in there too. Looks pretty cool. It's got an ink window, though you can pretty well see the ink capacity in there. So the ink window is a bit superfluous, but just in case you needed a clear ink window, you got one there. The green Vortex is like a green one. Almost looks like a malachite kind of material. It's like a swirled green. It looks pretty rad. I do like that green quite a bit. And then the Ghibli here is really like a red with gray. A little bit of yellow tone to it, a little bit of gold tone to it. There's lots of subtleties in these colors that, you know, zoom in on the pictures and look at them close up. There's more going on in the material than it might seem at first glance. So we got some close-up images there that you can check out. These ones are going to be numbered, but they're like a running number. They're not limited out of a certain number. So you can go check those out. It's number 6 size nibs on those. We've got those for $184. And then we got some little bottles of ink, little bottles of Palette Roshizuku, 15 milliliter inks. So same ink as what's in the larger 50 milliliter bottles, but if you wanted some that are in the smaller ones, if you've ever gotten like any of the limited edition packs or like 3 packs or whatever that they've had in the past, it's those same bottles. So like these cool looking squarish kind of bottles. So if you want the ink, but don't want to have to commit as much to a full bottle, you can get multiple bottles of these pretty much for the price of one regular bottle. So it's going to be coming out in all the best-selling colors of Roshizuku. I don't think it's going to be everything, but we're going to have a bunch. So go check those out. $20 for a 15 ml bottle of ink there. And then Diplomat Aero Mint is the next one. Now this is an exclusive of ours. We got to help pick out the color, and I like this color a lot. I like it a lot, and with the kind of satin chrome trim, looks really good too. So Diplomat's great. Aero pen is awesome. It's got that really smooth cap with a nice click on it. Very popular pen, and it's Diplomat's most, you know, it's like their flagship pen basically. Number 6 size Yovo nib, stainless steel on that, extra fine, fine, medium, and broad. We're gonna have that for $196. And yeah, it looks really cool. So we'll probably have them for a little bit. I don't know how many that we ended up getting, because sometimes we get them in like a couple different batches. But yeah, we'll see. If you like that color, move it up a little closer on your list. It's not going to sell it in like a day or anything, but it might not be around. I don't know if it'll be around like the rest of the year or anything like that. I really don't know. So yeah, that is it for what we have for new stuff right now. But you should check out the new arrivals and the coming soon pages on gouletpens.com, because there's been kind of a bunch of stuff this summer. Normally summer is like a little bit quieter, slowed down a little bit from periods like the holidays or maybe early spring, but things haven't really slowed down for us this summer. So there's still tons of new stuff coming out, which is always exciting. All right. We'll do a quick company update and then we'll get into the questions. All right. Don't have a ton to update as company here. We had a mental health half day last week, which I'll talk about mine. And then this week we had another video that we got out. This is a coffee and tea themed ink. So we have a category page on our site called Coffee and Tea Products. Fountain pen people, we are big into our drinks, our non-alcoholic drinks, though maybe alcoholic too, I don't know, but coffee and tea is what I'm really talking about. So we've got a bunch of different products that are themed that way, whether it's the coloration or the name or whatever. So Janae and I rounded those up, put together, we just packed that video full of coffee and tea puns. I think you'll really appreciate it if you're just into some corny humor. You may enjoy that one. So if you want to see some beautiful looking coffee and tea themed pens and see us acting a little goofy, should be a pretty fun video. So you can go check that one out. Let's get into the questions. All right, question number 1, Steam Dome 9162 says, "Hi, Brian, great Q&A. I have a question. Are there products that can be applied to written pages that can repel water? I asked because the other day I flipped through a few pages of my notebook while my hands weren't completely dry. Because of that, the ink on the pages smeared and transferred to my fingers." Okay, so this is a good question. Because you're not always in a situation where you necessarily remember what ink you had in your pen, or maybe you wanted to use some color that's not available in a water resistant type of color. Are there products that you can apply to the page post writing? In the fountain pen sphere, not really. I have a memory at some point. This problem with one, not having maybe the greatest memory in the world, but also being in this business for so long, I can't always remember what somebody mentioned to me like a decade ago. I feel like at some point somebody mentioned some kind of product that was in like a glue stick type of a format that was made to kind of smear over top of your paper and would sort of seal in whatever it is. I did a Google search. I ChatGPT'd it to try to find some advice. I got nothing in terms of what I think this product was. But again, this is not a fountain pen really thing. This was more of like an art product. So if you've ever heard of this type of thing, please let me know in the comments, because I feel like I'm going crazy. Maybe I just made this thing up. But anyway, I tried to look for that. I couldn't find it anywhere. I looked on, Paper and Ink Arts. I looked on Dick Blick. I didn't see anything that was even close. But I did find some other products. So I will mention what I can generally point you to, but I've never carried a product that does this. And when it comes to fountain pens, the thing that's tough about this is anything that you apply, especially if it's a non-waterproof fountain pen ink, anything that you apply to it over top has the potential to spread it, smear it, absorb it anyway. So you're going to need to test out whatever it is. So try some paper, try the ink, whatever the ink that you were using in the pen in question, and then try coating it with whatever the various things that I'm about to mention, and see how it works. Your mileage is going to vary a lot depending on the paper, depending on the ink that you're using. So there's no one end-all be-all product that will do what you're trying to do. That's the unfortunate part. It's going to take some experimentation, because unfortunately physics is working against you. Physics and chemistry. So anyway, I don't know about the glue stick looking thing or what that was called. The thing that will get you the best results overall will be to write with an ink that is water resistant or waterproof. That right there is going to be the best thing that you can do. Anything that you apply over top after the fact is not going to be as good as using an ink that's made for that purpose. So, you didn't know that. You are in this situation now. You've already written what you've written. So me saying that doesn't help you for what you've already written, but moving forward, if you think that you may want that as more of a feature for your writing, then we have a filter in all of our bottle inks that show, and samples that show water resistance as a feature. So you would want to sort and filter by that and then pick your colors from there for future purposes if that was something you really wanted to kind of make sure you get locked in the future. But a couple of products that came up that could work. Again, this is coming from the calligraphy and the art world where you're dealing with things like shellacs and acrylics, not water-based fountain pen ink. So I haven't tested these products myself. I haven't really tried them. I've just heard that they potentially could work, or at least the concept of them could work. But anyway, one is called Judkins Micro Glaze. It's like a glaze that you put over top of it. It dries and then it protects. So I'm not sure how that one applies exactly. You might brush it on, which could be a little sketchy in terms of fountain pen. Because anytime you have a fountain pen thing, if you take something wet and smear it across your writing, you could ruin it right there, and you could just end up sealing in a smeared mess. So test that out, or maybe if y'all have any experience in the comments of using any of these products, please share your experiences, because I would love to know myself even. Another one is beeswax. Again, any type of wax, anything you're rubbing over top of it could smear. But beeswax is something that I hear used quite a bit. It's going to change the look of the paper quite a bit and the texture, but that could be potential. There are some spray sealers that will sort of lock things in. Krylon Workable Fixatif. That's Fixatif. That's one. Krylon Crystal Clear Acrylic Fixatif. And then Winsor & Newton Professional Fixatif. Apparently fixatif is the word used for this spray stuff. So folks that are doing drawing, calligraphy, artwork that want their stuff to not move after the fact, these are apparently the products that are used for that. Yeah, so there you go. That is the best of what I have, unfortunately. I haven't tested these things out, but you got me kind of curious. I kind of wonder now, like, is there a product out there that actually kind of does what you're asking about and does it really well on a variety of fountain pen inks? It's something I got asked about a long time ago and had a better answer for and then forgot. And now maybe the product doesn't exist anymore. It is very possible the product doesn't exist anymore, and that's why I can't find it. In which case, it doesn't do me any good to mention it to you anyway. But it's not something I get asked about a lot, but I am kind of curious if that's something that matters to you all. So anyway, thanks for that question. It was an interesting answer. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, here's one from Donna G. Says, can the Boston safety pen use calligraphy inks? Some years ago, I watched a video where Nathan actually put white glue, which was slightly diluted, in a Boston safety pen. He wrote with it, then sprinkled on some glitter. After the glue dried, he knocked off the excess glitter. If that pen can handle white glue, shouldn't it also be able to handle the acrylic ink or shellac-based ink? Yeah, I believe so. I think that's part of the appeal of the safety pen. It's a steel nib on it. So, it's not the cheapest fountain pen because it's all ebonite, and it's a flexible nib on there, a steel flex nib on there. And it's got an ebonite feed too. But it is a kind of traditional safety pen design. Now, what is a safety pen? If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you probably just saw me open a pen like, what the heck? So they call it a safety pen because way, way back in the day, when fountain pens were kind of first coming around, they were known for leaking a lot. They were not particularly, they hadn't like really dialed in the feed design and stuff like that to keep it from leaking while you're carrying it around. But the safety pen, the reason they called it that is because the nib goes down into the pen and then you are closing it, and the only place the ink could go is out of this hole, and is closing it very positively in the top of this cap. So it is not going to leak while in transit. That's why it's called the safety pen. As a kind of a consequence, I don't know if it was part of the initial design, or maybe it was something that was kind of discovered later, or maybe it was just like more common with thicker ink at the time, maybe. But part of the advantage of it is using things like India ink or China ink or any of those, water resistant, kind of more permanent inks they were kind of traditionally used for dip pens. I guess this is sort of maybe like a sort of a crossover pen as fountain pens were becoming more popular. the reason that was beneficial is that the nib, as you're pulling it down and it's going down into the pen, it's essentially being bathed in the ink. And because it's all sealed up, the entire nib and feed system is going to be completely soaked in whatever ink that you're carrying around in. So it is more forgiving in terms of the material used. I believe that the feed is designed to be a little more open and gushing, especially because this is a flex nib, and allows you to use, potentially thicker inks in there. The one thing I will say is it's not going to do you a lot of good to let it dry in here. So you're not going to want to leave that pen sitting uncapped for too long. You're not going to want to, you definitely don't want to leave it uncapped with the nib retracted in there, because essentially all your ink is just going to dump out of the thing. But if you don't have it sealed all the way, or you leave it sitting there for a very, very long time, and it dries out in there, it's going to be a pain to clean. Now you can disassemble it and stuff like that, but it's best when using, especially any non-fountain pen ink, use it, but then clean it and get it out of the pen as soon as you don't need to actively be using it anymore. So, I don't know for sure if there are like specific inks that you're not supposed to use in here, but I believe it's meant to be a pretty forgiving pen. This is unique to the safety pen. But yeah, I have not personally tried every single one of these like extenuating kind of inks, these calligraphy inks and stuff like that, but I believe that's part of the advantage of it. So there you go. Hopefully that's somewhat informative. Give it a shot. See what you think. All right, Hannah Malcolm, 6683, says, hey, question for Brian. With as many pens as you have inked up, have you ever dealt with mold in your pens? And if so, what did you do about it? I left some pens unattended for a few months, and they got super fuzzy. Okay. I have definitely left pens unattended for a number of months. Now, the thing I'm going to say, I don't know how much experience you have with your pens or exactly what. I didn't get a picture or anything like that. You're saying that they got super fuzzy. There is something that can happen to pens that isn't mold, but if they're sitting there for a while and the ink starts to dry up a little bit, you can get these crusty little things that kind of build up, especially around the nib coming out of the slit of the nib, like little crustaceans, as I like to call them. So that is essentially just a reaction from the dye. It can happen over time. It especially happens a lot with orange inks. Certain red inks are kind of known for that. Whatever the dye components, whatever the dye makeup is for those like reds and oranges, there's something in those that likes to crust up over time. It is not harmful to the pen. You can wash it off, basically kind of swirl it around in water and almost washes right away. Or if you have to, scrape it with a toothbrush or something like that, and you just use some like pen flush or dish soap in your water, and it'll knock it right out. That's not anything you need to be worried about. So if that's what you're dealing with, that's not mold. You just clean your pen like normal and go about your business. Now, assuming you actually do have mold, I have some advice, but not from personal experience, actually. Of the many, many pens that I've used over the years, and many of them with ink left in them for months, if not years, I have actually never personally had a moldy pen happen in my collection. I've seen it happen. People post it online. Maybe a customer reaches out every now and then. It is not nearly as common as you might, be afraid that it is. It doesn't happen all that often. Inks today, there's really good manufacturing processes where it's pretty clean. There's a lot of biocides that are used in fountain pen ink. And it's just not as common today to have ink growing stuff in it, especially while in the pen. Now, if you're using the one thing where like ink itself can get a little funky, depending on how you're using it, what type of paper you're writing on, how often you clean your pen, if you're dipping it back into the bottle a lot. I remember one specific customer who reached out that was having an issue with mold growing in their ink. And then like a month after we were trying to help them troubleshoot that, turns out the apartment that they were renting had a black mold issue in it, and they needed to like move out and get that remediated. So if the environment that you're in has like mold spores all over the place, first off, that's not good for your body. So get that taken care of or get out of there. But, you know, the environment can get things into the ink, you know, if it's not sealed all the time or, you know, stuff like that can happen. Very rare though, still, it doesn't happen all the time. I wouldn't like be totally paranoid about that. But if you do have any mold that happens, if it's in your ink, there's not a lot that you can do about it at that point. I would just ditch the ink because it's just not worth trying to salvage it. But if it's inside your pen and you think that it's been, you know, gotten moldy or gotten fuzzy in there, again, most of the time it's just going to be dried up ink in there. It might look like mold. Most of the time it's just going to be dried up ink. But if you just want to be sure, you know, in my previous life to Goulet pens, the way I paid my way through school and started out a business with my dad for years out of college was power washing houses and decks. So I have quite a bit of experience with mold and killing it. And the thing that kills mold is bleach. Does a bang up job, nothing better. Now, bleach is not the best thing for certain metals. It can be corrosive. It's a pretty basic, high on the pH bleach. It's not the best thing for a lot of pen materials. There are certain pen materials that you don't want to get bleach on them at all. I'm trying to remember what those are. They're not the most common materials. Typical things like resins and stuff like that are not going to be hurt by short-term contact with bleach. So, you know, try to do a little research about the pen that you're trying to do this on, and your mileage may vary a little bit. So I'm giving you a little bit of that disclaimer here just in case. I don't want you to go throwing bleach around on everything and then have a mishap. But if you use household bleach and you dilute it like 10-1, it's definitely bleach, but it's not like industrial strength bleach that's in there at that point. You will be good to ink up your pen with that bleachy water. Leave it in there for a good like 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. That should be all that's needed to kill whatever mold is inside your pen. You know, maybe flush it through a few times, maybe do that more than once if you feel like it really needs to, but that's pretty much going to do it. You know, it's always best to disassemble the pen as much as you can so you can kind of get it everywhere. But in as much of a form as you can, soak that stuff, and that should help a pretty good amount. So, you know, I haven't personally, at least from what I can recall, I haven't personally come across anybody that's had a pen that's been so moldy and so bad that it's been unsalvageable. Now, they may have chosen not to salvage it because the pen wasn't worth that much trouble to them. But yeah, that would be the way to do it. You know, and then of course, once you use the bleach to flush it through, flush it out a few more times with clean water just to get all the bleach out of there. Maybe water a little bit of dish soap in there. You know, and you could always use bleachy water and then put a little bit of dish soap in there too. Actually, a little trick, little bonus fact here. I can give away the trade secrets because I'm not in the power washing business anymore. But the best way to use the least amount of chemical possible but still have it really effective when you're power washing a house is to have bleach in there, and you use a pretty substantial amount of bleach, but it goes over a whole house. There's tons of water going on. So in the grand scheme of things, it's probably not much more of a solution than you would be cleaning your pen with. It's just a lot more water that you're using. Use bleach, and then don't just spray water and bleach because it's just going to run down and it's not going to hang on there. You need a surfactant of some kind. So the best thing that we found using was laundry detergent. So we would mix laundry detergent in there with our bleach, and you shoot that with the power washer up there. And the hotter the water that you can get, the more effectively it cleans. So when we were rocking and rolling, we were using a hot water system for power washing. And then that bleach and laundry detergent, that hot water goes on there and it just attacks that mold. And in like 5 to 10 minutes, I mean, you could have a completely green side of a house and that stuff would look like brand new. And then you just got to rinse everything off. So in case you ever wanted to know so when I'm power washing my house now, what I do is I've got a little power washer that's got like the little hose that you can stick into a bucket or something like that to like siphon up your soap. So I will mix that like concentrated outdoor bleach that's like, 25 gallons worth or whatever the heck in a single gallon. I will straight up, dump that into like a 5-gallon bucket and do like several cups full of laundry detergent and then use that with my power washer to spray, and it does a bang up job. So there you go, little bonus for knowing how to power wash your house. But mold is mold. Like there's different types of mold, but bleach kills mold. So if you do that same technique in your pen, you should be good to go. All right, next question. Sarah Mitchell, 9247, says, do you have ink suggestions for the BENU Galaxy Cocktail? This is our Euphoria, our exclusive. So you came to the right place to ask this question. And yeah, I've got suggestions because there's like a bunch of colors going on in this pen, and I would be happy to share my recommendations. This pen, you got three main colors that are going on. You've got a green, which is like a really bright kind of meadowy green. You've got a purple, which is like a mid-purple, not so much on the lavender side. It's got a lot of pink to it. Not quite magenta, but kind of, it's like a little, it's a nice solid violet with a little bit of pink, so we're going to go that direction. And then a nice mid-blue, almost kind of leaning turquoise a little bit. And it's got quite a bit of translucence to it. The purple and the blue both have translucence to them. So yeah, that's what we're going to go with. So I broke it into 3 separate color categories, depending on which part of the pen that you would like to match. And I have 3 inks to recommend for each of those. So we're going to start with the green. Again, like very bright, kind of meadowy green. Pilot Iroshizuku Chikurin, I think would be good. Might be a bit yellow, but I don't know. It depends maybe on the paper and depends on the nib size and stuff like that, how yellow it may come out on the page. But that's a pretty good one, and that's just a well-behaved ink. Jacques Urban Vert Prey. That's a classic. Had that ink for a long time. Had some good experiences with it. Again, it's like a grassy green kind of color. Maybe a little bit darker than what's in the pen. But again, the pen is pretty bright and vibrant. I don't know if you would actually want a green exactly that bright because it would be kind of hard to read on the page. So going a little darker is not the worst thing in the world. So that's what I was keeping in mind as I was making recommendations. And the last one I have is Diamine Appletini. You can go Diamine Meadow too. That one's a little bit darker, but Appletini is newer. You know, it was from their Inkvent calendar, and it's a nice bright green. So that's a fun one, and the bottle looks pretty cool too. Let's go with purples now. Very vibrant, like I said, a lot of pink going on. So again, I got another Pilot to recommend here because they're just nice, well-behaved inks. Pilot Iroshizuku Murasaki Shikibu. It's a very popular Iroshizuku color, just standing on its own merit. But it's also a nice bright purple that I think would match pretty well. You know, on the purple in this pen, you do have like a lot of the pink tone to it, especially as it's thinner material on the grip. But on the cap, it's darker, and then as it fades into the blue, the purple goes a little darker. So purple, you could really kind of go a range of different kind of purples and have it match some part of the pen. Diatramentus Purple Violet, pretty popular color. Again, that's a nice, not quite magenta, a lot of purple to it, but leans into the magenta. So that one could be a good choice. And then last one I had was Monteverde Parrotfish Purple. So this is an exclusive of ours that we helped them design. It is a really nice purple color, similar to Murasaki Shikibu. Not as much of the pink to it, but it's got silver shimmer in it. And because this pen is filled with this holographic glitter, I thought maybe having a shimmering ink would be kind of fun to match it too. So I threw that one in there. And then last but not least, we have my favorite color, of course, blue. This is like a nice mid-blue, kind of leaning a little bit turquoise. Pilot Iroshizuku Konpeki is an easy recommend. Just a really nice solid blue, decent shading. That one would go pretty well, well-behaved as well. Robert Oster Blue Water Ice. I use this. It's probably my number one ink that I use these days. I always have it inked up in my daily carries. So that one's good. And then Jacques Urban Kyanite du Nepal. So this is part of their 1798 collection. So it's a bit more expensive and the packaging is really nice and stuff. But it's a darker kind of turquoise, so very much leans in the blue camp, but it's got silver shimmer in it, just like that Parrotfish Purple does. So if you wanted to shimmerize your blue, Kyanite du Nepal may work. And there's a bunch of others. There's a bunch of Diamines and Robert Osters and all kinds of colors. There's a bunch of Sailors, that will all kind of fit in these ranges. But I was trying to keep it somewhat narrow, so, it wasn't overwhelming. But what you can do is you can go onto our site and you can filter by color. So you can go to like bottled ink, for example, a page, and you can filter it by color. And you can see the hardest one will be blue because it kind of leans turquoise. There's a blue and turquoise that are separated. So you might want to click both of those, but it'll filter out all those colors, and then you can just kind of comb through and see which one you think looks kind of close. Yeah, so there you go. that's what I got for you. Next question we have, this is from MJ Kossel. Says, thanks for the fun facts about stainless steel that I've talked about before. You're welcome. It reminded me that I'm neglecting my feather dip pen because the nib holder got rusty. What can I do to fix it? I just pulled the nib and it looks like I could scrub that clean, but what about the housing itself? Also, how am I supposed to clean the thing when I'm done with it if I can't rinse the water and air dry? P.S. Yay for stainless steel on fountain pens to avoid this problem. Yes, this is a dip pen life problem. If you have no interest in dip pens and all you care about is fountain pens, maybe just skip this question because it's going to be not anything that applies to you. But, you know, whatever. If you're in the middle of washing your dishes or mowing your lawn or whatever it may be, I will try to make this as educational and entertaining as possible so that you're not bored to tears while I'm trying to cover this. Okay, so I have a dip pen here, and this is a good example because this one is actually a little bit rusty. So the way dip pens work is you have non-stainless steel nibs that you put into the pen. It's usually what's called spring steel, but for chemical purposes or whatever, it's just steel. It's non-stainless, so it's not going to be rust resistant. And mine has actually gotten a little bit rusty, especially on the underside there. I haven't used it a lot, but it's just gotten rusty just from age. And then this little part that it is held in is called the ferrule, F-E-R-R-U-L-E. That can slide out of the pen. It's easier on some than others. This is actually called the pen holder. So this is the pen technically, also known as a nib. It's kind of weird. Calligraphy terminology is a little bit different than fountain pen terminology, but the ferrule here anyway also teensy bit rusty, and I've got a little bit of rust going on inside here. So what do you do about that? Well, inside the ferrule, you don't really have to be too particular about it. You know, it might make it a little tougher to get it in and out, but it's still going to work for a while. Pretty much everybody I know that deals with calligraphy stuff carries spare nibs for sure and spare ferrules so that you can swap them in and out. They're somewhat of a standard size because they're meant to be kind of universal. And they've been around for a long time. So pretty much don't rule out needing to replace them. That's pretty much as people are doing calligraphy with dip pens. That is just a part of life, is you're just replacing nibs pretty often. Usually it's not necessarily because it's rust, but because you might like wear them out. But that's why they're relatively cheap, unless you get into like very, very specific ones. So yeah, but say you want to clean it, okay? The way that you clean stuff like this, there's some commercial products that you can get out there. Again, like art stores and calligraphy stores are going to have more of that stuff from brands like Higgins that are probably going to have more of those like specific commercially made cleaning, you know, chemicals. But if you don't want to have to invest in something like that, white vinegar will do a pretty decent job. I don't deal as much with calligraphy, but I deal with a lot with plain old steel because I have a lot of tools, and, you know, I have chisels and, you know, nails and, you know, drill bits and things like that. They get rusty just as well. So I'm very familiar with the soaking in white vinegar. Usually the longer you soak them, the better, especially if like it's really kind of crusted on there. You might have to leave it in there for like a day or two. But that's more like the heavy tools that I'm thinking about. These might not need that as much. And then using like an old toothbrush or something to scrub it can also help with that. If you need something maybe a little more aggressive, you can use baking soda and mix it into a paste with just water. And then you can apply that to it. The baking soda will help to de-rustify it. But also as you're scrubbing it, it's a little bit abrasive as well. So, you know, that's something that's good to use with something like a toothbrush if you feel like putting in some elbow grease. And again, there's other like chemical, like stronger chemicals that are made for, you know, rust removal and stuff like that that you could look into. But I think the white vinegar and the baking soda stuff is relatively safe and easy to use, and it's not going to have all these like intense smells where you're like, should I really be breathing this in? Probably not. But yeah, so that's the case. And you're asking me like, what do you do if you can't rinse it off? I don't have a clue. I don't use dip nibs regularly enough to really have like major life hacks with this. But I don't really know what situation you would end up in where you can't do that, because I guess maybe you're talking about like not the the pen itself being able to do that. But if you're like in a situation where you can't rinse it off necessarily, I don't quite know. But either way, everywhere I read says it's best if you can clean it off after every time you're done using it to, keep the ink from drying on the thing, to keep it from rusting. It's really best to try to do that. If you can't, then you might just have to do a more intense cleaning next time you go to use it, or you might have to replace your nibs a little bit more often, or replace your ferrules a little bit more often. But more or less, that's what you should be dealing with. And then, another option too, this is an oblique pen holder. So if you're doing certain types of scripts, like Spencerian and stuff like that, where copper plate, I believe, is a little easier to do, though I don't know. There's different ones. So this is called a straight pen holder. And this one's called an oblique. And this has a brass, it's not a ferrule, I guess. I don't know what this piece is called, actually. Maybe it's still a ferrule. I don't know all my terminology. And actually, it fits in a little loose in there. How about that? Probably need to pinch it a bit. But it has it so that you can write at an angle. And really, it's meant to be able to held kind of like this, so that as you're writing with it in a very natural position, the nib is being held at the slant, at the right type of slant that you would need. Or is it slanted that way? No, it's slanted the other way. Wow, clearly I don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm going to stop. But either way, ones like this, because they're brass, they're not going to corrode quite as much as just plain old steel would. It's a little more resistant. It still might corrode a little bit over time because whatever the ink is may have salts in it. It may have some other things that could corrode the brass. I don't know if you can get brass ferrules. I know there's some synthetic ones, because if you look at Kakamori, right, which I've used a bunch, every ink showdown I use, this is like a resin in here. And I believe you can buy these types as well. This is, again, sort of a standard thing. You can fit, a regular dip nib in one of these as well. So there you go. So now you don't have to worry about the ferrule rusting out, because there's no metal, there's nothing to rust. You just have to worry about the nib. So there may be an option for synthetic ferrules that won't rust out as much either. Anyway, I now have officially exhausted everything that I feel anywhere near qualified to even discuss. Please forgive me for anything I said wrong. I would pretty much concede to almost any random person in the comments probably knows more about this stuff than I do. But I've talked about it a little bit and explored it enough to be dangerous. But yeah, so that's what I got for you on that. Hopefully any of that can be helpful to you. All right, last question for this week. Karen, 1946, says, "Hi, Brian. The other day I saw your video of the LAMY 2000 stainless steel, the one you did when dinosaurs just got extinct." I think that one's a classic. I don't remember how old that one is exactly. It's at least a decade old. You see a much younger, much more lively Brian back then. Brian's seen a lot of things since then. Let's see. Anyway, so you saw a very old LAMY 2000 stainless steel video, and you mentioned that the clip was a platinum plated clip. Is that still the case for newer manufactured LAMY 2000 stainless steels? Or was that for the batch that they did when LAMY launched the pen? But maybe now it's changed. Thank you very much. Your knowledge is always appreciated. You're very welcome. I have knowledge to share, and here it is to share right now. Here's the LAMY 2000 stainless steel. This actually may be the one that I used in that video way back in the day, but they are the same. They have not changed. So it is a very, very shiny platinum clip on these things. The rest of the pen is brushed stainless steel, which looks very nice. But the nib itself is platinum coated, as well as the clip. Very shiny platinum there. If you are familiar with the regular black LAMY 2000, it does have a silver colored clip, but this is a brushed stainless steel. So the clip on the black LAMY 2000 is the same material as the body of the stainless steel LAMY 2000. So you can see a little bit of a difference. I'm not sure how well. Let me try and catch it in the light maybe. There you go. When I catch it in the light, it's a little bit easier to see. They're generally the same color, but it's the finish that looks really different. And then, of course, it's a fingerprint magnet on the platinum one because it's shiny platinum. And then other pens that they've done, limited editions and things, They tend to be on the shiny platinum side as well. This is the pine. Had the same clip as the stainless steel. The only other one that I've seen is different is they did a brown LAMY 2000 that has sort of like a brown plated clip. That's the only LAMY 2000 clip I've seen that's been different than these other two. So I really just wanted to kind of flex and show you that. But I believe that's the only thing that they've done like differently. But to my knowledge and understanding, the stainless steel LAMY 2000 has always had this shiny platinum clip, and I'm not a soothsayer or a fortune teller, but I believe that it's going to be that way moving forward. So that is the answer to that question. So I hope you enjoy that, and thank you for watching my old videos. Some of them are probably pretty entertaining. All right, so we're skipping the pen spotlight this week. I'm trying to move it along because I packed a lot of other stuff in here. There's no shortage of talking that I can do. But let's get into Brian's adventures, shall we? So I've been outside a lot. It has been stinking hot and muggy in Virginia here. We've been getting a ton of rain, and just the mugginess will not stop. So you have to like swim to your car, you know, after you get off work. But let's see here. What happened last time? So shortly after I recorded last week's Q&A, and I talked about how many trees had been falling around my property, I think it was either the next day or maybe 2 days later, we had another bad storm, and one of my neighbors, my next door neighbor's trees, it's a Bradford pear, which are terrible trees. They get really heavy and they're brittle, so they just split apart and fall down. Basically the tree like split in half. It's like a 30-year-old Bradford pear. Thing just like split in half and just fell like right on my driveway. It wasn't really a problem because I could get around it, but bless his heart, my neighbor, he's in his late 70s, and he's just one of these guys that just likes to work even when he probably shouldn't. So, you know, I try to be in good relations with my neighbors, and they're sweet people, so I try to help them out. But, you know, his wife had texted me and said, you know, hey, he's out there, he's going to try and trim it up. They felt really bad, you know, and I'm like, really, it's okay. Like, y'all don't even understand how many trees I cut up. It's okay. I like doing this kind of stuff. But he was out there, and she was like, yeah, he had a heat stroke last summer and all this. And I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. This guy needs to not do it. But it was in the morning before I left for work. And so I was like, okay, I didn't have a lot of meetings that morning. I was like, I really don't want my neighbor to like have a heat stroke here trying to do the nice thing and clean up this tree. Because it was too much. I mean, this tree was like probably 25, 30 feet tall. It was a lot of wood. And I have a tractor with a grapple and lots of chainsaws, and I'm half his age. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to come in a couple hours late, everybody. I want my neighbor to not have to deal with this thing. So that's what I did. So that's kind of fun. Then let's see here. What else we had? We had a mental health half day on Friday. So that was kind of cool. Friday I was shooting videos. So cut a little bit into the mental health time, but I like shooting videos for you all. So that is good mental health time for me. But then I went home. It was on July 11th, which is 7-Eleven, which they give away free Slurpees at 7-Eleven. So we had never done that before. So the kids thought it would be fun. They wanted to go to a store and get some popsicle sticks or something for a project my daughter's working on. So we did a little family outing, and it was fun. It was very hot, and it was absolute madness at 7-Eleven. The floor was so sticky. I felt so bad for the people, but you know, that's part of what they do every year. So if you didn't know, 7-Eleven gives out free Slurpees on 7-Eleven, July 11th. So that was fun. Got to experience that. And then this weekend, I helped a friend move, because when you have an able body and a pickup truck, this is what you do. So ended up doing that for like 7 hours on Saturday. And then I came home and I was like, well, I'm already I literally had sweat through everything that I was wearing. Like my entire outfit had changed colors because it was completely drenched in sweat. And I didn't think to bring a spare change of clothes because I knew I was just going to be sweaty anyway, but that's on me. So I came home and I was disgusting. And I was like, well, I kind of need to trim, you know, my son had mowed, but it was like, I kind of need to trim the yard. So I just went ahead and did that. And I was like, I went to throw something out in the garbage cans, and there were flies all in there because it's summer and it's hot. And I was like, well, guess I'm going to go to the dump too. So I ended up having this like absolutely brutal day in the heat, moving a ton of stuff, but felt good. I rested on Sunday and it was all good. And now it's Monday afternoon and I'm recording this. So that was pretty much, and then I did a lot of drumming too, because of course after you're like moving stuff all day and your legs get all sore, you want to play on the drums for like two or 3 hours. So that's what I did. Anyway, I'm having a blast doing all that stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much been my last week. So yeah, I don't rest. I'm going to be like my neighbor. Like that's going to be me. I'm going to be out there trying to do stuff well beyond when I probably should. And, but I also listen to Rachel a lot. And if she tells me like, you really shouldn't do that, then I'll be like, okay, I'm not stubborn about it. I like to do stuff. You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm sure y'all can relate. That's pretty much it for this week. So I want to thank you for watching. Leave me some feedback, ask me some questions. Let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Check out gouletpens.com. Got all kinds of ink, paper, and other stuff, pens. Yeah, subscribe to our channels, see what we got going on social. All right, and my fun fact for this week. I don't know. I was creatively bankrupt, so I just looked up some facts about the Bradford pear, which is kind of interesting. So Bradford pear, also known as the calorie pear, or the Pyrus calleriana, is the scientific name. That's the calorie pear, a species of pear tree native to East Asia in the family Rosaceae. Its cultivar, Bradford pear, is known for its offensive odor and is widely planted throughout the United States and is increasingly regarded as an invasive species. It's deciduous, growing to about 25 feet tall. Let's see here, blah, 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 the leaves, blah, 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 that part's boring. This is fun. The fruits, which are often assumed to be inedible due to their abundant cyanide-laced seeds, are small and, almost hard, almost woody. They get softened by frost and then birds eat them and poop their seeds. That's how they spread. Let's see here. Calorie pears are remarkably resistant to disease or fire blight. However, some cultivars, such as Bradford, are particularly susceptible to storm damage and are regularly disfigured or killed by strong winds, winter weather, or limb loss due to their naturally rapid growth rate and acute vertical branching. Trees were introduced to the U.S. by the U.S. Department of Agriculture facility at Glendale, Maryland, as ornamental landscaping trees in the mid-1960s. Not that old. They became popular with landscapers because they were inexpensive, transported well, and grew quickly. Lady Bird Johnson promoted the tree in 1966 by planting one in downtown Washington, D.C. The New York Times also promoted the tree, saying, "Few trees possess every desired attribute, but the Bradford ornamental pear comes unusually close to the ideal." Yeah, typically known as ornamental. A famous example of a calorie pear is one that was found to have survived the destruction of the Twin Towers on 9/11 and was restored to full health subsequently. It's often referred to as the survivor tree. So there you go. Known as sort of an invasive species, but it's not like the worst thing. It's more of a nuisance, and just basically because like if you don't prune them properly when they're younger, they then grow out a lot, and then because they grow so fast, they're kind of weak, and they just split apart and fall on houses and vehicles. So that's kind of annoying. But anyway, they typically only live about 25 years. The one that fell is like a 30-year-old tree, so it totally makes sense. So anyway, that's what I got for you. Fun fact about Bradford pears. That's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see y'all next week. Right on.